Hi, everybody. So it is 6 o'clock p.m. and it is Thursday, and it's live with Taranga Ranch. And tonight we are talking about local reptiles. Now, as you know, reptiles have a special place in our hearts. When we started, before we were doing what we're doing now, which is native wildlife education, we were doing reptile rescue. In fact, that's how we started. A lot of people take in reptiles that they don't really know how to take care of or don't know all the facts about. So that's how we started. We have a special love for reptiles. Tonight, we're going to talk about local Southern California, Los Angeles area, in particular, reptiles. And this presentation is going to, is it not? I thought I was going to be able to share my screen with you on YouTube, but it doesn't look like I'm going to be able to do that. So once I figure that out, that'll be a different story. I thought I was going to have a little slideshow to show you, but we all know that I can describe it to you and you're going to know what I'm talking about. So that'll be fine. So some of the animals we're going to talk about tonight are going to be snakes. We're going to talk about lizards. We're going to talk about rattlesnakes. We're going to talk about rattlesnake safety. We're going to talk about Lyme disease. We're going to talk about what makes a king snake, and we're going to have some fun. So let's start with what makes a reptile, right? Why is it a reptile? So they're different from mammals in that they are cold-blooded. They don't create their own body heat, which is why you see them outside getting sun, right? That's why they wind up dead on the road a lot of times, because they went out there to get warm. And so they have scales, right, instead of skin, and they shed that regularly. They molt it, right? And they are egg laying. So even if a reptile seems to have live birth, it's usually just because the eggs hatched inside. That would be ovoviviparous. There's your vocabulary word for the day. Vocabulary lovers out there, ovoviviparous. The eggs are inside and that's where they hatch, and it looks like the animal has a baby, a live baby. But reptiles don't do that. Reptiles lay eggs. So take that to the bank. All right. And let's talk about some of our local reptiles' adaptations for survival. Maybe you've seen the blue coloration on the underside of the western fence lizard, right? Maybe you have seen the split tongue, the bifurcated tongue of a snake, right? Maybe you have seen, what else can I look at? One thing that's really cool about all reptiles is that in the reptile world, the more space you take up, the better things are for you, right? So when you see the lizard doing the lizard push-ups, right? He is either displaying like, hey, buddy, you better stay away from me because look how big I am. Look how much space I'm taking up. Or he's saying, hey, sexy mama, want to come over and hang out? So he is using his space, and he feels like when he does that, he's showing you, oh, look at all this surface area I take up. And also a lot of, well, lizards in particular, but they like to be taller than the other ones that are around. And the higher they are, they look down on everyone else. That's how life is in the reptile world. So one thing that's super cool about all reptiles is they have a Jacobson's organ. So inside their mouth, towards the roof of their mouth, they have an organ that helps them decide what's going on in the world. So they put their tongue out. Usually it's the forked kind, but not always. They pull it back in, and it lets them know what's in front of them. Is it dinner? Is it dirt? Is it a friend? What's going on? So for a reptile, the Jacobson's organ is probably as powerful as like our eyes or nose are for us, because that's how he takes the world in. Let's see what else. And they use colors, right? Like you've seen the belly of the lizard outside in your backyard. And sometimes they're using the color to blend in, because you're a reptile. You just want to stop. If you think something's coming for you, you are depending on having camouflage skin so that you can just stop and nobody will know you're there. That's really the goal of the reptile. But if he has to display for some reason, it is fun to have a blue belly. I'm just saying, it's really fun, I think. And you wonder, how does something like a snake, like where do all his organs fit in there, right? Like, how does that work? They have longer organs. Can you imagine? I know, crazy, longer organs in the snake. So that's kind of boring. But I wanted to talk tonight about some local reptiles. And number one, and one of my all-time favorites, is the alligator lizard. Now, if you don't know who this guy is, you can totally Google this also on your phone, anytime. But he's the guy that sort of looks like a snake, and but he's not, and he's got little short legs, right? And he moves sort of like a snake, and he's in a lot of our backyards. And often when you see him, he's missing part of his tail. So that's another interesting story. Western fence lizards, similar. They're sort of distant cousins, and both of them have tails that will come off, although the alligator lizard's tail is juicier, there's more to it, and it grows back, I think, a little more normally than the Western fence lizards. But they both do that, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But the alligator lizard, often he likes shade, and he likes bushes, and he likes to be able to burrow. He's a low-lying lizard. He's not as territorial as the Western fence lizard. He's probably not the guy that you've seen doing push-ups, right? He's not as territorial. Whereas the Western fence lizard will do push-ups at you all day. And the Western fence lizard, at least in our area, tends to be a little bit smaller than the alligator lizard. The alligator lizard can get pretty big, especially if he didn't lose his tail yet. He could get to be pretty long, including that original tail. And they all eat bugs, insects, things you're trying to get out of your yard, they're going to help you with naturally. So that's pretty cool. So don't use things like glue traps, because that really doesn't work out well for little lizards who want to eat bugs around your house. And so let's see, alligator lizard, Western fence lizard, and then we've got a gopher snake and a rattlesnake. We're going to talk about that in a minute. Let's go back to what happens with the tail. The fancy word for it is caudal autotomy. And basically what happens is when the animal that has the tail gets scared of something like a predator, involuntarily the tail will fall off. It's a stress response. Often the tail keeps wiggling, the lizard makes his escape, and the predator gets the tail. So it's a super great adaptation for survival, right? So if you see them without their tail, and their tail basically just has extra electrolytes and stuff like that, especially for the alligator lizard. When they're without their tail, they're at a little bit of a loss for a little bit of time until it heals over, and they have to, get regular meals, and it'll usually grow back, but it usually is not as magnificent as the original one. So you can tell how stressed your lizard in your backyard's life has been by what his tail looks like, right? And who eats these lizards? Birds will try to eat them. Snakes will eat them. For king snakes, for example, their favorite prey is not mammal, it's reptiles. So king snakes like to eat other snakes, and they like to eat lizards. So these lizards have a lot to watch out for because they're not very big, but they are very fast. All right, where am I at here? I was so hoping to share this screen with you. And I had some pictures here where you can see the difference between a gopher snake and a Southern Pacific rattler. So in our area, we have both. We have a Southern Pacific rattler. He's our only rattlesnake. And then we have the gopher snake. And they can have similar coloration. And if you are not that close to them, or if you don't know that much about them, you could totally mistake one for the other. But the rattlesnake head is something you should get to know. Like you could Wikipedia it. It's pretty simple image search, but it's sort of shaped like an anvil, right? It's big and bulky. Whereas most other snakes just have a smooth head that just blends straight into their body. I'm going to show you what I'm talking about because, you know, it isn't really a talk about native California wildlife and reptiles if I don't bring one. Okay, let's see. You're going to hold on here. Be patient with me. Come on, Joan. Okay, so she's... Thank you for your patience. You know how much I love you right now. This is Joan Baez. Well, not the Joan Baez, obviously, but she's our Joan Baez, and she's super active tonight. I'm not really sure why. She's usually more chill than this, but she's really showing off what an amazing king snake looks like. And I want you to look at her head right now. We're going to focus on her head. I want you to see how it blends in with her body. You do not see really where her head ends and where her body begins, right? See if you can tell. It's hard to tell. That's how most snakes are. Where are you going? She's so funny. She's looking for a tunnel. She's like, I'm out of here. So that's how snakes that don't have venom in general are shaped. So if you see that big clunky head, that's going to be a rattlesnake. If you see a snake that has a splotchy pattern on it that looks like squares, not like this one that I'm holding, but squares, that's the gopher snake. And his head blends into his body like this one's does, right? And so that's the snake that doesn't have venom. Let's talk about this snake for a minute since I have her out. This is a California king snake. Her name, that's why her name is Joan Baez, right? Because she's legendary. This snake is super typical of the kind that you might find right in your backyard. This snake is very beneficial. This snake's favorite food is baby rattlesnakes, right? I know. So this snake is called the king snake because he can eat a rattlesnake and because she's immune to the venom of rattlesnakes also. So that's pretty cool. What else? And so this one is called a banded king snake, and you can see her beautiful bands circling around her. And she has a local cousin also who would have stripes instead of bands, right? So you see how these are going in circles around her. The stripes would go the other way, right? They would go this way. But it's the similar coloration with a brown that could be darker than this, could be a lot darker depending on where the snake is from, who his parents are. And this beigey color could also be brighter. This is just one kind. So they, you know, just like people, they all have a different look. They all have a little bit of a variation of color. based on where they live, and they have their own little distinct populations. So they're pretty interesting. What else? Oh, I want you to see, also notice her tongue, and notice that she is accessing her Jacobson's organ right now, right? So the tongue is coming out. She's like, what is that in front of me? Is that my friend? Is that dinner? The tongue goes back and tells the Jacobson organ, this is what's out there. And then the Jacobson's organ tells her brain, that's not dinner. Don't bite. So that's how that works. What else about her? Anything more? Anything special about snakes, Joan? No, not today. She said, that's it. She said, you have other things to talk about. So I'm going to put her back. I know that was fun, right? I think so too. I love her. She's the best. All right, so that was a non-venomous local snake. And hopefully you've seen one of those in your backyard because they're super cool. All right, and yeah, they don't mistake gopher snakes for rattlesnakes if you can help it. Have a look online. Oh, I have another friend to show you. Are you ready? Are you ready? I know you're ready, but she's not ready. Hold on. She's coming. Actually, this one's a he. Okay, you know what? So he's super jumpy. I think it's because he's not where he usually hangs out, because it's not usually in this room. And I'm not going to stress him out. But I wanted to let you know that the California king snake has a mountain cousin. And this mountain cousin is really beautiful, has bright orange coloration, bands, again, bands of orange, bands of black, bands of white. If you see this snake in California, it is not a coral snake. Those only live in Arizona. So if you see that in California, that is a king snake. It's a California mountain king snake. I think it's recently been renamed, but that's how I know it. And it stays smaller than the snake that I just showed you. It's probably about half that size, I would say, an adult. And but people do confuse them with coral snakes, and they will sometimes try to kill them because they're afraid of them. But they're great for the ecosystem because, again, their favorite food is also reptiles. So so they're doing a good job too. And if you see it in California, it is not a coral snake. We only have we don't have that here. So. All right, what else? What else? What else? We talked about the alligator lizard. We talked about the fence lizard. Oh, another fun one. Maybe you've seen something outside your own house. These guys like to hang out by the patio light. And they're not native, but they are a local, and that is the Mediterranean gecko. So they look very gecko-like. They have sticky fingers, and they come out at night. They are nocturnal. We don't really have other nocturnal lizards here. So if you see a lizard out at night on your stucco wall by your patio light, you probably have an invasive Mediterranean gecko. They're here. They're probably here to stay. You can always record your observation for iNaturalists, so we know how prevalent they are. That's always good information. But they seem to fill a niche that nobody else is filling. So, you know, they are invasive though. But they are doing well here. And that is the Mediterranean gecko again. And again, you might see him at night around your patio light. So they are here. And I also want to talk about reptiles' relationship with shade. Everyone thinks that reptiles just want to lay out in the sun all day, right? Like, oh, that's all they want. They just want to bask in the sun and be in the sun and get on the rock and get as much sun as they can. And the reality is that they don't actually spend that much time in the sun. So as ectotherms, as cold-blooded animals, they need to get their heat from the exterior, from around them, right? So, and they need to get that heat if they want to metabolize their meal. So it is important that their body reaches a certain temperature every day, except in the winter when they slow everything down. But that's another story. In general, they will go out in the morning to get to the temperature that they want to be. As soon as they're there, which is usually by a pretty early hour, they go back and they sit in the shade for most of the day. Most of them are not out in the heat of the day, unless they're, they may be doing a little hunting or whatever. But I think people overestimate the amount of time that reptiles spend in the sun. So they can get too much sun, just like you and I can. So, and sometimes they'll come out at night too. They might come out in the morning. That's the main sun of the day, but sometimes they'll come out in the afternoon just to warm up again too. Maybe do some hunting. And a snake might definitely come out in the afternoon to warm up, and hunt, because that would be a good time to get rodents. Talked about tails coming off. What else? Those are the main reptiles that you are going to find in your backyard. There are others. There are tree frogs, there are toads, there are salamanders and newts that live in the area. We don't really have a lot of turtles that are wild anymore. I don't know of any really. So like I said, there are other things. You know what I forgot? I forgot about my friend, the alligator lizard, who I did actually bring out, and I forgot that I brought out. So I can show you the alligator lizard, right? So hold on to your britches. Hold on. I know. It's very exciting. All right. These guys already went to bed. They're like, what is going on? What is going on? So this, can you see our little friend, the alligator lizard? He's sleepy. He's like, oh, he's going to make his big escape. These guys will definitely try to bite you if they can. He's pretty mellow in general, especially once he realizes that I'm holding him. And that, nobody's coming for him. And he's covered in some bark right now, but this is his tail, right? This is that little guy. He looks like a snake when he moves. His limbs are tiny, and he still has his own fresh, beautiful tail, as you can see. Obviously, if I stress him out too much, he's not, but he's super cute. Tell him hi. Tell him hi. He's like, yeah, put me down. I don't like it. All right, ouch. I trip on everything in my path. All right, so that was fun. So you have so many alligator lizards up in the San Diego mountains. Yes, you do. And you have your own variety of the mountain king snake, and you have your own variety of the king snake too. And I think you have some different rattlers than we do. Does anybody have any questions? Okay. The little alligator lizard that I just showed you and the western fence lizard, I have the greatest news for you about Lyme disease. Okay, so get this. The tick that is carrying Lyme disease, right? He bites the lizard that is a western fence lizard or an alligator lizard, right? Both of these lizards have a protein in their blood that kills Lyme disease. So now that tick is no longer carrying Lyme disease. And if everybody's lucky, the lizard also eats the tick, so we don't have to worry about it anyway. But these little adorable local lizards are literally fighting the fight against Lyme disease. So when you wonder, why should I care about whether that's in my backyard? Why should I dissuade my cat from bringing them in by putting a catio up, right? You're protecting these little guys, and they will eat the insects for you, and they will rid your backyard of Lyme disease. So there you go. That's my story. Thank you so much for hanging out with us today. This has been super fun. If you have any questions, now is a super great time to share them. And if you don't, that's cool. And if you ever do, if tomorrow you're like, oh my gosh, I totally forgot I was going to ask her a question about whatever, email me. We are info@tarangaranch.org. And if you are watching this on YouTube right now, if you could subscribe, that would make it easier for me to take my show on the road, because I can't go live with my mobile device until I have 1,000 subscribers. So help me get there. And in the meantime, love your local lizards. Don't put out any poisons or any traps. And I hope that while you are taking care of yourselves during this crazy pandemic, you are appreciating all of the super awesome, amazing wildlife that shares your backyard with you. So thank you again for joining, and have a great rest of your night. I'll see you again next week. Same time, same channel. Bye, everybody.